Hello and welcome back to another episode. Indeed, welcome back to the spare room where I keep all my retro consoles. Today is May the 4th, Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. And I'm very much in the mood for some Star Wars gaming nostalgia in the shape of Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Now today let's just do some free play, I suppose, and reminisce a little bit about a very important game. Certainly for me at least. This game was released in May 1999. And really its job was to try and get us hyped for the upcoming Star Wars Episode 1 it coming to cinemas. And really, it didn't have to work very hard to do that. You know, the hype was real. At this point, me and my friends were basically wandering around in a daze, for days on end, no pun intended. Just fantasizing about what might be in the upcoming Star Wars movie. And when this game came out, we rushed to get one of us got our hands on it as soon as possible, to try and glean information about the upcoming movie as much as possible before it came out. Little did we know that there wasn't much in the way of plot, certainly not from the movie. And in that sense, actually, really, the game is based around that one set piece, the pod race on Tatooine. But what a set piece to base a game on, in that sense. The developers here did a wonderful job, LucasArts did a wonderful job of, I suppose, imagining a whole racing circuit, a whole racing world on many worlds beyond simply the race on Tatooine. And so, you know, it was a very clever move by Lucasfilm and LucasArts to do this, because you know I certainly was studying every track, trying to figure out what track would be where, and where, you know, for example, where might we see the origin of Darth Vader. Now you've got to remember that at this point we had no idea, or I certainly really had no proper sense that we wouldn't see Darth Vader until 3 films in. You know, like I say, the hype was real, the hopes were real, and it was an exciting time to be a Star Wars fan. You've got to remember, I was only really two or 3 years into being what I would properly consider a Star Wars fan at that point. You know, I'd seen the special editions released in 1997, and at this point, this was my opportunity to see a Star Wars film on par with everyone else. You know, no one else had seen this film yet, and so you were just as much of a potential fan as people who have been alive and seen the original film in the cinema in '77. So you know, it was an opportunity to, like I say, to learn the tracks, to study it in minute detail, and to try and understand the world that we were entering. Now, in that sense, again, the game isn't particularly deep, if that's what I mean. There isn't, you know, we don't really get a sense of the world of the pod racing circuit. We do, though, get a sense of, I suppose, some of the culture that surrounds it, the gambling, for example, some of the characters of the other pod racers, and there's quite a good selection of other racers. But crucially, we get a sense of the speed that was engendered in that pod racing sequence. This is a good game. This isn't just a Star Wars skin on an F-Zero rip-off, for example. This is actually a really good game with some well thought out upgrades to your pods, the ability to repair the pods on the fly, which you sort of see a little bit of that in Episode 1. With people, they have spanners, for example, and things ready to go in their pods for on-the-fly repairs. And also as well, in terms of that sense of speed, this game was great for multiplayer. I really remember. I mean, this is probably, I suppose, second only to Mario Kart in terms of the multiplayer races that me and my friends would play over and over again on the N64. This is a good game. Now, it was one of those things where you got to remember as well that we weren't, I certainly wasn't yet annoyed by Anakin Skywalker. So lots of his, for example, jumping around at the end of races, lots of the insults that he'd throw at people during races, they didn't annoy me yet. Now they slightly annoy me, but then they didn't, I have to say. It was the oh, okay. It was also the opportunity to learn some of the other racers that kept you coming back. So in addition to the human Anakin, obviously you have people like Sebulba, and again, we didn't really have. I don't remember having initially a sense of the fact that Sebulba would be a key part of Episode 1. You know, Fuju, when he finally crashes his pod in that race. But I do remember, I suppose, almost growing to love is too much of a word, but growing to really like the characters and the racers in this. And actually, I think when you finally see that sequence in Episode 1, it's a bit of a shame that there isn't a bit more, I suppose, of the camaraderie. In some ways, actually, isn't it strange to think that with Disney now running the show in terms of the Star Wars canon, wouldn't it be cool to have perhaps a pod racing movie? You know, along the lines of was it Rush that came out a couple of years ago with Chris Hemsworth, directed by oh man, what's his name? I put his name on screen. Great director, did Beautiful Mind, etc. This kind of thing. Currently has a TV show called Genius as well. Anyway, put that to one side. So yeah, something along the lines of Rush, where you have a fairly serious story between rival racers, but happening on the pod racing circuit. That'd be quite cool. I'd go and see that. So yeah, in that sense, this game I think has untapped potential in terms of the world and worlds that it showed us. For example, this thing here, I love that you have this statue on the start line with the bunting and the sense of a broader culture surrounding the race. There we go. Now, as you fly around, you can, as I say, do for example on the fly repairs by holding the right shoulder button. You can flip your racer to the right and to the left by doing that, but you have to take your finger off the accelerator, which is a bit strange. That's the C right and C left buttons on the N64 controller. There is an air brake, that's the B button, and you can you can spectacularly crash like that. You can slide around by holding the Z button. That helps you slide around corners. That's the trigger button. The controls are good, but I just wish there was a way to, as it were, do a barrel roll, which didn't involve taking your finger off the accelerator. It feels kind of counterintuitive to do that. I do remember, back when I used to play this all the time, getting to the point where I try and use my index finger to try and push, my right index finger to try and push the C stick. So let's pause it for a second. So I'd be sort of racing like this, so I'd be using that to repair, and I'd try and sort of do that to maybe sort of show off and go through a crack in the wall sideways. But it's difficult. It's not easy to do. It wasn't back then, certainly. I don't feel confident trying it at the moment. I mean, I might let's give it a go. And there you go. It's it. Okay, it works, but it doesn't exactly feel natural, especially when you're on ice when you're trying to win a race. But it works. It works, and I know that there have been other ports of this game. For example, I think there's a port on PC, which people seem to have a great amount of fun with. But really, for me, it's always going to be this console, this game, and this control scheme that do it for me. In some ways, it's just such a shame that the pod racing was tarnished by I don't know. I suppose the treatment of certain characters, the way that for example, Jar Jar Binks got involved with the engineering of the pod. Getting caught in the energy beam between the two engines. It became in some ways a little bit slapstick, and a little bit silly. And even actually in the pod racing section, there are moments which are unfortunate, shall we say, especially compared to again, for example, how the pod racing is shown and how it is demonstrated in this in this game. you know, while you're playing the game, it feels serious. It feels like it's life and death. It feels like it's something along the lines of, you know, chariot racing in ancient Rome. You feel as though you're competing. The field is competitive, and people are watching, and the stakes are high. So, yes, okay, that was in episode 1, I guess, to a certain extent. Yeah, they needed Anakin to win in order to leave Tatooine to get the engine parts that they required. But I'm still not convinced that it was handled entirely properly. But that's George Lucas. That's the strangest of Lucas. On May the 4th, it's one of those weird things to reflect on, is that Lucas gave us Star Wars. George Lucas gave us all this. But at the same time, he just couldn't quite stop tinkering. And he also couldn't take advice. I remember reading an interview where he was in the build-up to, I think, to episode 2 coming out, I think, possibly. There was an interview with Nick Park, the lightsaber and stunt coordinator for the movies. And apparently there was a conversation where Lucas was sort of told people, you know, look, back off, this is my baby, I know what I'm doing with it, I know which way we're going, I know what I want to see in the movie, and sort of therefore he also said he knew what people wanted as well. And apparently Nick Park and a couple of others said, no, George, no, not anymore, no. Star Wars belongs to everyone, you know, and therefore it's your duty to sort of take on board what people think. And I don't think Lucas ever really was able to do that. You know, the comments about selling Star Wars to white slavers, for example, when it comes to the deal with Disney, really shows that he's at least has been in recent years, a little bit bitter about it. And so it's a little bit bittersweet, isn't it? I mean, you know, you want to really celebrate this world that he gave us, or worlds, and the backstory, and sort of, you know, recently, I say me and my wife have been really getting into, for example, Star Wars Rebels. You know, while that's got nothing to do with George Lucas, it has at the very least, got so much of the DNA of the world that he imagined, so as to make it pretty much make Lucas indispensable in the vision of Star Wars. And so I wonder how people will see Star Wars in the future, you know, and the creator. A bit like I suppose Charles Dickens, you know, Charles Dickens and to a certain extent Christmas Carol have been somewhat forcibly separated from each other, haven't they, over the years? People know the story Christmas Carol and they watch the movies, the different adaptations, but I know that towards the end of his life, Charles Dickens was quite fed up of that story because he wrote other stuff, he worked on other stuff, and while it did bring him in some money, he used to do reading tours, I think, especially in the US. He was very popular in America. His relationship with his creation was quite difficult, and I wonder if that's basically where history will consider George Lucas to be in a few years' time, if not already, actually. But anyway, that's, yeah, slightly strange train of thought there, but it's an interesting situation to be in, isn't it? Oh, Spice Mine Run. Let's do this one. Star Race. Now I'm racing on the basic circuit because I want to be able to talk as well at the same time. So hopefully you don't blame me too much for that, or don't judge me too much.
The current record holder for this track is Bullseye Navarre.
Bullseye Navarre again? Blimey, okay. Off we go. That's the one thing I suppose that I do miss about the current way in that people play computer games is that it's much more difficult to get people around to do a multiplayer party, you know? This game would be so much more fun, should we put it that way, if I could get some people around to properly indulge in a bit of multiplayer. Because I'm not having that much trouble, he says, touching wood, in terms of beating the computer. But I don't want to complain too much, because if I do, then I'll get my ass handed to me. But you know what I mean? It's interesting how this game really reminds you that, and also actually, for example, Mario Kart 64 really reminds you that couch co-op, couch multiplayer was the thing back in the day, and I kind of miss that, especially the banter, because the banter you get online, you know, for example, whenever I go online with Gears of War, it's just not, for me, it's not fun anyway. It's often people just being abusive, and that's not what you want. You want your mates. You want to have a bit of a rivalry, an ongoing story. Every time you come to a new computer game, it's an opportunity to prove that you're better than James, or, for example, or Ben. Yes, those are real people. I won't give you their surnames. But anyway, that's just me being a bit of an old curmudgeon, I guess, wanting couch co-op. That said, though, there's a great opportunity for couch co-op in my local comic book store. They have a wonderful, literally a couch setup with a whole range of retro consoles. So maybe I should just turn up there with this cartridge one day. Just slam it in the N64. Who wants a go? I'll take all. Ah! I'll take you all on. He says, just before he crashes. So I'm quite liking the atmosphere in this track. You get a real sense of it being a working mining colony or something. We've passed some very heavy machinery doing its thing. 2 minutes 39. Oh, blimey. On we go. This really makes me excited, even more excited for Star Wars Episode 8. I wonder if we're going to get another trailer today on May the 4th. That'd be exciting. I very deliberately haven't commented on trailers for a while on this YouTube channel, just because, you know, everyone does it. You know, it's a very common thing to do, and really, especially with the Star Wars trailers, beyond simply going Star Wars, you know, what can I say? I suppose I would say, though, I would take this opportunity just to say that the most recent the teaser trailer for Episode 8 looks very intriguing. I don't know, it's this whole idea of the Jedi have to come to an end. Makes me wonder if whether or not Luke is trying to, he envisages a new order. I mean, literally, in so much as potentially moving towards the grey Jedi instead of the light and the dark, the Jedi and the Sith. Perhaps something a bit more in the middle, a balance, as Rey says in the trailer. So, yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm hoping that it's going to go some interesting places. And really, again, in many ways, games like this just highlight how Star Wars is ripe for potential, isn't it? It's just so much potential in terms of places, possibilities. As I say, I'd love to see a pod racing spin-off movie. I'd love to see an Obi-Wan Kenobi spin-off movie. I think giving Ewan McGregor another shot at being Obi-Wan, especially Obi-Wan finding some sense of redemption, you know, from his regrets, would be great. That'd be a great movie. I'd love to see it might sound a bit strange, but I'd love to see actually almost like a zoology movie in the Star Wars universe. You know, so maybe someone who's working for Jabba the Hutt and who goes around collecting animals and creatures because he's personally interested in them. So maybe the story of how the Rancor is captured, and maybe there's a broader zoo or possibly a science academy or something. Who knows? You know, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff going on there that could be great fun. Exploring different worlds, capturing different animals, seeing the different ways that people view creatures in the Star Wars universe. That could be interesting. You know, there's all sorts of possibilities there. I think it just comes down to, well, let's face it, it comes down to, I suppose, market testing, doesn't it? It comes down to what Disney thinks will sell, but I don't know. I hope they're going to be creative, because so far I'm hearing very strange things about the Han Solo spin-off movie. A friend of mine is actually she's on the acting extras circuit, and the Han Solo movie is known as Red Cup in behind the scenes. Solo being the brand of red cups for parties in the US, and apparently Red Cup is a bit hit and miss. Certainly from what she's told me, it's the vibe isn't good on set. And so in some ways, maybe rather than going for the obvious stuff like a Han Solo spin-off movie, maybe being a bit creative with what they do could be an interesting next step for Disney. I don't know. It's May the 4th. I'm allowed to dream. I'll tell you, I'm allowed to speculate. And really, just coming back to that, just to come to the end of this race. And that's really the whole point of this time in my life. 1999 was a time when it was just all about speculation, and this game was a huge part of that. It was a huge part of me and my friends just dreaming, and and where Star Trek is very close to my heart, is not so much about dreaming but hoping. Star Trek is a hope for the future, isn't it? It's humanity at its best, going out into the stars. Star Wars is an opportunity to dream and imagine what could be out there in a sort of almost like a fairy tale type way. And I think that's at its best. That's what Star Wars is. It's a fairy tale, and long may it continue. Oh, you won, but not very well, I'm afraid. That was a lot of crashing there. Anyway, guys, hopefully this has been interesting, rambling stream of consciousness, and hopefully you have and will enjoy your May the 4th. As ever, until next time, May the 4th be with you. Take care.